What it is, y'all, it is your old boy Pilk, and if you haven't subscribed, now's a great time to do so because we are on the final episode of the season, and so season 2 is confirmed. They confirmed it at the end of this episode, so season 2 is coming, and of course tomorrow we're going to be covering the episode versus the manga that it's adapted from. Plus, I'm going to start picking up the manga basically until we catch up, and then we'll be just doing chapters whenever they drop. So a lot of stuff to get hyped about, a lot of stuff to basically stick around for. Plus, Danmachi Season 5 comes out in just a matter of days, and we'll be covering that here as well in comparison to its light novel companion. Funny enough, by the same author. So, great stuff, guys. Make sure you're around for that. It is going to be an absolute blast. Now, before I get into spoilers and all that stuff, I do want to talk about my overall critiques of the episode. So, obviously, like, I'm not going to be mean to the episode. The animation was good. It was probably a low 8, high 7, only because there was a lot of recycled footage, stuff from the beginning. I would have loved to see that from a different perspective. Maybe I'm asking for too much, but it's not an uncommon trope in anime where they just, spend the first 5 minutes of the final episode kind of recapping that final fight. I really don't have any major problems with it. It just... Is it wrong for me to want more? I don't think so. I think it's my critique. You know what? Comments your section to roast me on this one, but that is my personal critique on this. Now, sound design as always in the series is absolutely on par. Not even on par, like way above par. Like just fantastic, awesome. I have no major arguments with that. It's always high 9s, almost a 10. Like the sound design is just through the roof and just amazing quality. They know when and where to handle fades and Foley and all that stuff. It's just off the chain every single time, just without question. Story-wise, I do have a couple of critiques this time around, but that's only because we had this trope of now they're once again borrowing Danmachi characters, which we'll get to here in a moment. We'll talk about that. I'm not necessarily mad about it, but I preferred the way they did it with both Gareth and Leafia/Felvis, where they were just kind of background characters. Now we literally are borrowing a character for someone who's got a lot of exposition and is very important to the plot. Though it's interesting, I will say. I'm going to give extra points back. So if we say the series is a 10, I'm going to say the series is a 10, but, this is the 4th character we've borrowed from the original Danmachi light novels, and this time almost not directly, but enough that it makes a difference. Even in that series, we saw Finn twice already. We saw Finn in the current timeline and Finn in the background timeline for the Estrella records. So to see him a third time it makes sense, but I'm just going to take points off because I feel like it's less of a nod now and more of a, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's a little too much in my opinion. But that's just me being critical. So from this point going on, we are going to get into spoilers. So if you have not watched the episode, make sure you do so. There was more in this episode than I expected there to be. So there might be some major spoilers here, including old boy behind me. It probably wasn't a good idea for the thumbnail, but it is what it is. So if you have not watched the episode, now's a good time to go back, watch the episode, come back and check it out once you're done, because we're jumping in. So the first few minutes of the episode is literally just a rehash of the last episode. I wanted it from a different perspective. I wanted some extra added in shots. It was pretty much shot for shot. It was just great. It just, it was a great fight. I'm not mad about it. And I said before, it's just a general anime thing. They do that a lot. Get you hyped for the last fight. There's not a lot of content for the lead into season 2, so, we have to recap a certain amount of it. I would like for them to have animated more shots and made it feel a little bit better, or a little bit newer, I guess I should say. Not better, but newer. But that's me, and that's me being, I have to be critical of it. Like, if I just sit here and gush, I'm not really adding any content. I'm not really raising the bar for next time. So I'm just going to be a little critical, and I'm going to say that for me was not a low point, but just kind of a snooze. You know what I mean? So After the opening sequence, however, we get a lot more content, and we get, new perspectives of the Grand Duke falling, and Will literally talks about how the power is leaving him. So he knows, like, he could feel the magic. He can feel the magic imbued in the sword. They even start to really talk about it. He talks about how the incantation just kind of came to him. Like, it was not something that he necessarily did. It just felt, it was just a gut feeling that he had. Now, as a book learner, you can kind of take it as, oh, he's probably learned this somewhere, or he's got, there's something going on. But there's something more to it. It's not that he can't use magic. It's more like it seems like he can borrow magic, which is really interesting. So, one thing leads to another, and obviously we have Werkner, and we have Edward, like, flying in. And lo and behold, on the cliffs up on high, there is this cloaked figure and a bunch of dudes behind him. And one dude kind of dressed in black who's got some very familiar garments on. And he takes his robe off, and you see this dude, who actually, funny enough, does look like a Danmachi character, almost like shot for shade. Looks like one of the deities, which I'm sure is very much by design. But they talk about, this is the guy that the Magiavander I've been talking about is MIA and is in the dungeon. And he is the oldest, he is the wisest, and they even say the most powerful of the Magiavander. And he, as all of the Sentinels and all that stuff are now like encroaching on our heroes, everyone's wiped out, everyone's out of energy, and the Sentinels and all that are about to land. He just boom, and everything goes up. And I love that, because as much as it would have been really fun to see Will just lose his garbage and just go balls to the wall and wipe everything out, it's not terribly realistic, if you can call an anime realistic, but it's not terribly, like, it's more of a trope, more of a MacGuffin, and I like the fact that they've been saved. It, to me, makes a little bit more sense this way. Plus, they did lead up to this. They talked about him being on the quest and all that good stuff, and it introduces a character that, once again, I was very critical of, but as as the monsters are all gone and he introduces himself, this cloaked figure with a giant backpack, which actually, by the way, is very reminiscent of Lily in Danmachi, who Finn and her share essentially they're like that series version of halflings, but essentially they like slide down, or he slides down the mountain, and he goes to introduce himself, and he takes his cloak off, and it is Finn. It is literally Finn from Danmachi. Like, completely. Like, as the voice actor, which is really cool. That's a nice little Easter egg. I'm not mad about that. I love, if they're going to borrow a character, get the voice actor to do the character. Like, just, if you're going to do it, do it. Don't like, oh, it's an homage, oh, it's this, oh, that. Every single time this time that they've had the character, they borrowed from the character from the other series, they have actually gotten the proper voice actor, which is really nice. I like that. So he introduces himself, and we get a little bit more from this guy a little bit later on, so I'm going to kind of jump ahead, because he actually, as you find out, he's essentially the one that is supposed to be overseeing all the people that are physically strong, not just magically. And, he seems pretty kind of bent out of shape about it, for lack of a better way to put it, although he is pretty chill. He's a pretty chill dude, but that's just, if you've watched Danmachi, Finn. Well, actually, you probably don't, because he doesn't really get a lot of shine in that series. But if you're on the light novels, which is, I know, like 4 or 5 of you watching, but nevertheless, it is on par for his character. So, getting back to the dungeon stuff, essentially, they're talking all about, what's going on, and how everyone was saved, and we get a little bit of Werkner and Edward kind of responding to this, but everyone's pretty much wiped out. And we find out pretty fast that there were some total of 11 people in the dungeon that were straight up unalived. And that's not as many as I expected. I really thought there'd be more, but it really kind of shows you like the diligence and the urgency that the professors and all that dealt with, because it was also mentioned that they were just professors. It wasn't like randos in the dungeon. It wasn't just all students. It was all professors protecting students when all Hades broke loose. So, that's pretty interesting and pretty telling. And, obviously things, they show the whole sequence of everybody mourning, but things kind of get back to normal pretty quickly, honestly. Obviously you get like the shots of the whole party in their in the hospital rooms, and they're all recovering. I love the fact that Julius is still just talking crap constantly. He never learns. This dude has become one of the funniest, like, I guess, the butt end of the joke type characters. He's incredibly strong. He's incredibly, like, he's just talented. He's good at what he does. But his ego constantly gets shattered, which is even funnier because he is the ice guy. Like, what does ice do? You ever dropped an ice cube on the floor? I did this morning. Everywhere. And that is his ego every single time. He just gets completely demoralized and yet comes back talking smack every single time. And I appreciate it. It's funny, but it's also like, it's interesting to see a character that is like that, but instead of where they're clearly going with Sion, where he's clearly becoming the rival, the Bakugo of the series, he's actually learning. He's actually figuring it out. Or, well, see, he's not even learning. Sion's learning. This guy is just, he's a gag character, but he can put in work when he needs to. And I think that's an interesting thing because you don't see a lot of that in anime. Normally, the gag character is just, silly or weak or gets, put down a lot. This guy, he can put in work when he needs to. He just has an ego and nobody deals with it. And I appreciate that. I as a human being like that, just because that's kind of how I am as a person. I don't deal with that crap very well. So obviously everybody is now recovering, and you do get another funny part here where, and I cannot remember her name for the life of me, but old girl, the blonde hair one that put everything together. I know when I watch the episode, I'm always like, oh yeah, that's her name. I'll remember that, and then I forget because I'm terrible with names. But she's like, man, I'm hungry. Like, you hear her like stomach growling, and it's just a really funny moment. And Colette comes over with an apple and feeds her an apple. And if I get why they did this, it's the last episode. It's not important, but they recycle the animation of her eating that one bite of apple over and over and over again. And I am so triggered by One Piece doing this that it every single time that happens, I just remember, and this is going to go off on another series, Pika from the Dressrosa arc knocking down the same 7 buildings 4 or 5 times per episode for like a dozen episodes, and it makes me rage. I'm like, at this point in time, can we get another? And I know she only does it like 3 or 4 times. Can we get another shot? Can we get another angle? It's not that hard, but once again, I understand. I have to make a choice. Do I want season 2 sooner, or do I want better animation in the episode? My answer is both, and I know it's not going to happen. But as a critic, that doesn't mean I can't ask for it. I will take points off for it, even though I know what I'm getting is significantly better. Doesn't mean I can't ask for more. And I know those animators are severely overworked. I know they work for pennies on the dollar. And you know what? I'll be honest, as a fan of anime, I applaud them. And they really deserve more shine. They deserve more credit. And I shouldn't be this cruel, but I just feel like it's my job as a critic. Like, I don't know. It's catch-22. Like, I'm empathetic, but I do feel like it's my job to go, could we have not had more? Nevertheless, tirade over. Basically, at this point, we just kind of have Will and Sion facing off. Like, obviously, Will's down, and he's training, and Colette's like, what are you doing? And I love this, because I said at the beginning of the series, I hated Sion. And I didn't see him getting a lot of... I did not see myself actually learning to like the character in this episode. And I knew they were going to do it. I even called it when I did the whole Sion character assassination video. I knew that this is what they were going to do. And I knew that at some point I was going to start liking him. But the fact that he got out of bed and the fact that he actually pushed himself... Not only that, you got to bear in mind, he jumped down 2 whole floors. Can you jump 12 feet? I ain't about to do that mess. I've done it. Landed in a very, very, very soft pit of sand. But to land on, like, the lawn, you'd break your legs. And he's just doing it. But here's the thing, guys. He sees Will, and he sees Will as a rival. And you can see now where the difference between this and when we had that whole, the magical tournament arc, where he hated him. He was livid. He was done. He was pissed. And now he sees him as rivals. He treats him with respect. He's now bringing himself to that level. He wants to be physically... Endurance is not a word, but it will be now. He wants to have that physical endurance that Will has. So he's pushing himself. And I'm over here like, you've grown. Character, Sion, you have grown and you are getting better and you are learning. He's no longer, I mean, he is cocky and all that, but you could tell at the same rate, he's not hiding behind Will anymore. He's pushing himself to be on that same level. And I like that. So my whole character assassination video stands for the middle of the series. But now at the end of the series, I'm over here like, you actually make me like the guy. You are making me like the guy. But I got to get back to Finn for a minute. Because this is like the big reveal of the series. So when we first saw Finn, you see his gloves, his boots, and all that. They look like, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he's hanging out with the headless dude. The guys in the dungeon. Now, when we see them, they've got this big blade, and kind of looks like it's made out of like a bat wing or something. It you know, the Pokemon Lunala looks like her wing, and he's like just talking about it, and he's like, "We got our prize," and Headless is like, "Yay, we can go party." I love Headless. I think he's fantastic. I'm glad it's not like just a monster or a familiar. I'm glad it's an actual character because Headless, I am all about that character. That's like one of my favorite villains in anime right now. Because he is completely nuts. But we see Finn bring that same weapon. Now, it's pretty easy to tell there's multiple of these out there. Finn and this guy I don't think are the same character. But Finn takes it to the headmistress of the school. Her name's literally just Cauldron. And he presents it to her, and they talk about how it's got like these magical properties and all this, and it's very dangerous. And she's like, "Cool, I'll analyze that," and drops a big cauldron behind her. But that's when you get the whole exposition about like, you know, I'm supposed to be the guy that's in charge of all the strong people. You do the magical people. They're in between do the mix. And she's like, "Yeah, but he wants to be the Magia." And Finn's just kind of like, "Bet. I am..." Well, it's another character from Danmachi. I respect that. And so, yeah, that's more or less, like there's a couple other things I haven't touched on, but more or less is the end of the series. And we now know that a season 2 is incoming, and I am about that life. I am stoked because there is so much more story, so much more that they could cover. And they even they basically close it out with them going back to their academics, and Werkner's like, "Look, this is literally your final exam." So we know that there's so much more to come. They really leave you ready for more, and I cannot wait for season 2. Now, we'll be reading ahead of the manga. We'll be covering the rest of the manga, like I said at the beginning of the video. So if you want to be here for that, stay for that. I can promise I will probably still be a nasty, awful, terrible critic of the manga, but I feel like it's my job. I feel like this is, we don't just want to gush about it. We want to You always want to want more. Understand, appreciate, and respect what you have, but there's no problem with asking for more, in my opinion. Anyway, guys, that's Wistoria Season 1 on the books. Absolutely loved it. Can't wait for Season 2. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and I'll be back with more. We'll do the manga review tomorrow, and then in about a week's time, we should have Danmachi Season 5. So I'll see you guys here for that. It'll be a ton of fun.